Hey there, I know you wanted to watch the intro to Top Gun for the 37th time today. Honestly, it's one of the only ways I could fall asleep too. But, I gotta make this quick. This video's title sequence has been following around everywhere for the past week. We really need to talk about... Oh god, I think it's broken.
I think it's time to
just
blow
sit there
this.
watching it. Help
Get
me out.
everything and stuff together. Okay, 3, 2, 1, let's jam.
Alright, that's it. No, we're not doing the whole thing. Get out of here. I'm not pissing off more than one entertainment corporation per video. It's bad enough that I'm gonna owe Paramount and Kenny Loggins money. Jazz! Anyway, where was I? Oh yeah. So, I'd like to say two things before we get into this. First, for those new here, likely most of you, hey, the name's Chet. I'm with the Department of Results. Second, I'm a strong advocate for the continuation of the relentless hunt for all the remaining A-50s in Russia's air fleet. So yes, you could say that I'm a supporter of Ukraine, and that's why I think we really need to talk about this little pattern I've noticed. Every time there's a new Western weapon system fielded in Ukraine, everyone gets it in their head that the war will be over in a week and blue and yellow flags will be flying over Vladivostok. There's a shocking amount of disappointment when those standards aren't met. The Leopard 2 is a great example of this. It's a remarkable tank, and was even better when it was designed, in the 80s. When it wasn't expected to deal with swarms of RPG warheads wearing angry yet commercially available Mavic drones as a hat. It's a big ask for a tank designed 40 years ago to operate efficiently in that environment, and it's just as unrealistic to expect a jet from the same era to operate in the same capacity as it did during the global war on terror, but in what is likely, for both sides, the most dangerous airspace in human history. It's a very air defense saturated environment. Anyway, I got the idea to write this script as soon as I saw this news. I even ripped the emergency brake on this big project that I was working on and decided to upload this instead. Now don't get me wrong, it's great news, and I'll get into that a little later. But I swear, some people I see on Telegram think that the F-16 is going to end the Russian space program on top of single-handedly winning the war. I'm not saying the F-16 won't be good for Ukraine. In fact, it might even be great. I'm just trying to say that we really need to keep our standards grounded. And to make my point, let's go into what the 16 can do. So, for those not familiar, this is the F-16 Fighting Falcon, equally beloved for its lethality as it is for its smile. It happens to be my 9th favorite fighter jet to enter military service. Oh, and we call it the Viper, because it's cooler. To keep this short, it was designed in the 70s initially as a lightweight, exclusively air-to-air fighter platform, that eventually evolved into a multi-role capacity for various reasons. It wasn't exactly built to do it, but it became capable of handling it. Rather well, actually. It's a nice multi-role design with numerous specific variants, many of which were exported. The specific versions that Ukraine will be receiving are these right here, the F-16A and B, the major difference being the number of seats in the cockpit. They are earlier versions, yes, however, they've already received their midlife upgrade package, making it more correct to call them the F-16AM or BM Block 15 MLU. Fortunately for you, that's too much effort to say more than once, so it'll just be F-16 or Viper from here out. But basically, it's an earlier version of the F-16, but upgraded to the standard of the later versions of the F-16C and the D. And due to the role that it was promoted into, it gained the capability to use almost every weapon system developed for aircraft at that time, with many new weapons being fitted as necessary. Here's a brief list. Air-to-air missiles. The AIM-7, the 9, and most importantly, the AIM-120. More on that guy later. Bombs. Plenty of them within the F-16's capabilities. Everything from GPS and laser guidance. and even unguided freefall bombs are on the table. Another flavor of air-to-ground, the Viper is capable of using a few different guided and unguided missiles and rockets. To name a few, the Mavericks and Hydras are quite useful. On top of that, there's also a missile that will help with suppressing and destroying enemy air defense, and it's called the Harm. Extending the range just a little bit, there's a few standoff munitions that will allow the aircraft to launch at a stationary ground target from hundreds of miles out. Oh, and there's also a few anti-ship missiles it's compatible with, and just as the name entails, it's pretty good at killing ships. Much like the AIM-120, we'll be going into a few of these a little later in greater detail. So, we've gone over the weapons, but how would this plane be expected to use them against a near-peer adversary? Well, like any aircraft, it greatly depends on the mission. The decision has to be made as to what it's intended to destroy, and it will carry the tools for that job. One of the various air-to-ground configurations will arm the Viper with up to 6 Maverick missiles. If the opportunity is provided, that's the capability of 6 nearly effortless tank kills. And that's not all. Generally, if your job is to be a bomb truck, your jet will be weighed down with over 10,000 pounds of bombs. You might be able to terraform a grid square, but it's not exactly great for maneuverability, and you're sacrificing a lot of space for air-to-air ordnance. Meaning, in the event that enemy fighters are detected, it's generally best to not take that fight, even if it means dropping your payload and running away. The fighting would likely be left to your escort. The F-16 armed to the teeth with AIM-9s and AIM-120s, effectively creating a 30-mile no-no circle around the formation. Assuming the enemy has enough planes and the fighting spirit to get close enough, they will have to contend with one of the scariest turn fighters of the 4th generation, that happens to be no longer slowed down by the weight of the recently expended missiles. So, this plane can carry just about anything, whether or not it's secured to a pylon with duct tape, and happens to be a purebred dogfighter. But is it really relevant for the situation Ukraine finds itself in? Well, that's the question I'm here to answer, and the best way I can think of to demonstrate my point would be to invite a special guest. And speak of the devil, that's him now. Oh boy. So my special guest isn't exactly fast. No matter, that gives me time to go over the scenario. The keen among you may have noticed the cluster of Russians behind me, and before you say that they wouldn't be that bunched up, let me finish. I really wanted to demonstrate the AC-130's main gun, and Russian soldiers happen to be surprisingly easy to pay off. Like, these guys will go pretty far for a shockingly low quantity of cigarettes and Pepsi. Other than that, I assure you, this will be a fair... Oh God. Oh no. Anyway, just goes to show you that no matter how capable Wikipedia says a tank, missile, or in this case, an aircraft is, if the enemy doesn't allow it to operate in that capacity. So, what could deny our previously mentioned multi-role fighter? Well, a lot of things. Just like any aircraft, it's vulnerable to the multitude of air defense systems littering the Russian-occupied countryside of Ukraine. This vulnerability limits how close the F-16 can get to the action. There's a reason Su-25s are flying so low in most of the footage out there. And on top of that, there's the risk of Russian aircraft, which are, granted, also being forced into a similar position as the F-16, because they have to avoid the air defense on the Ukrainian side. So, the fact that an aircraft is forced to stay lower the closer it gets to the front line, believe it or not, reduces the range of its weapons by quite a bit. Oh, and that doesn't just apply to bombs. Missiles too. If this sounds obvious, this part isn't for you. When Sir Isaac Newton invented gravity, he didn't just make it easier to pour a glass of whiskey. Gravity adds potential energy to whatever rocket booster is sending a missile off to be somebody else's problem. Meaning, how high you are adds to how far a missile or bomb will travel. The speed at which you release the ordnance is a factor as well. That's why toss bombing is a thing. Basically, with a lot of speed and even more math in just the right angle, a pilot can airmail a bomb many miles further than it has any business going. It's actually a common tactic for both sides in this theater, with both bombs and rockets. With that, an important thing to remember is that bombs aren't cheap, and if you don't make them count, the cost adds up quite a bit. However, for Ukrainians, there's also the hurdle of getting those bombs and rockets to begin with, and the less newsworthy but just as important fuel supply. It's not just getting it that's the problem, it's also transporting and storing it, because as soon as it crosses this line right here, it's fair game as far as Russia's concerned. The fuel and munition supply isn't the only thing at risk past this line. On top of that, there's also the fact that Ukraine's F-16s will have to relocate, often. Because as soon as a Viper is wheels down in Ukraine, you better believe that the hunt is on. So, here's the thing, right? Russia is the first country I can think of that gets into a sprinter's stance after learning of an opportunity to score a surface-level propaganda victory. They'll try their best to destroy one as soon as possible, with the dwindling hope in their hearts that they capture one and get to push it into Red Square and, I don't know, bend the wings or something? Saw a landing gear strut off? I don't know. That whole Abrams thing is just weird. Alright, so after all of that, it might sound like I'm trying to say the F-16 won't be effective. Again, that's not what I'm trying to get at. I just really want our standards to be realistic. So what will it do for Ukraine? Among many things, save them on fuel. The Viper might as well be a Prius with a 20mm Vulcan. As far as jets go, it's significantly better on fuel than other go-to fighters out there, all without sacrificing its formidability in a fight. But even though the F-16 has the proven capability to contest the airspace, there's too much of a risk that one will get shot down. That's not a huge deal for America, because, you know, lots of airplanes. But for Ukraine, their air force is stressed enough. There isn't such a thing as an acceptable loss. So I don't think we'll see F-16s rate fighting a Su-27 anytime soon. Regardless, the air-to-air capabilities would be limited to about 30 miles at the best case scenario with the previously mentioned AIM-120, one of the primary missiles fitted to this aircraft. I know that sounds pretty far, but the fact that Russian aircraft are lobbing cruise missiles a few hundred miles away from their target every other night kind of sets that into perspective. In order for this jet to do anything about that, it would require the pilot to fly deep behind enemy lines to engage any of Russia's cruise missile platforms, where it would proceed to have an awful time. There are tools for this job that are far safer and provide a much further standoff range, but it would require integration with long-range systems such as the Meteor or the AIM-174. Though possible, it would require some changes to the F-16. And even if Ukraine gets a supply of missiles like that, you best believe it'll come gift-wrapped in red tape. To keep ourselves grounded, it's important for us to understand that it probably won't be getting those missiles. And without them, there's a good chance that it won't be actively intercepting anything outside the steady train of strike drones and cruise missiles. Which is a very noble cause, and one that Ukraine genuinely needs help with right now. But you can bet your ass we won't be hearing much about that outside of Ukrainian sources. Anyway, as far as its air-to-ground capabilities, the largest effect that the F-16 is going to have is going to be due to its integration with Western missiles and bombs. It's got the luxury of most Western ordnance already working on its systems, unlike the tedious retrofitting process that was done to convince some old MiG-29 or Su-24 to speak NATO. One of which being the AGM-88 HARM. It's an anti-radiation missile that hones in on the various radio frequencies that a radar system puts out, making it perfect for hunting down the ever-present Russian air defense. Because, believe it or not, the radar is far more of a priority than the missile systems themselves. It's like going for the eyes instead of the gun. The previously mentioned toss bombing tactic will also likely be utilized. This guy happens to be pretty good at it too, especially when paired with precision gliding munitions, some of which can even reach as far as 50 miles without sacrificing accuracy. One thing that I'm honestly shocked that I haven't seen too many people talking about is the fact that the F-16 can use the AGM-84 Harpoon missile with little to no modification, which happens to be a land, sea, or, far more relevant to this topic, air-launched anti-ship missile with a reach of over 100 nautical miles. And Ukraine just so happens to have some already. I've got a feeling there might be an increase to the rate of expansion for the Black Sea's artificial reef. So, suppressing Russian air defense, swatting drones, toss bombing, and anti-ship strikes are likely in the cards for the Viper. And while long-range standoff munitions are possible, I don't see America handing off any of its JASMs. Look familiar? Future Chet here, honorary time warrior and longtime volunteer at your local animal shelter. So, that string of text from the beginning, you know, the one that said that this is an ongoing situation, this is what I meant. There's been a few updates to that whole standoff munitions thing, and it looks like the United States is actually considering this. Likely a side effect from the invasion of Russia, but that's an even longer story. Regardless, remember that everything this guy says is subject to change at the drop of a hat. And just like that, it looks like I gotta go. Take it away, less interesting Chet from the past. So the only currently feasible way for the 16 to receive long-range strike capabilities would be for Ukraine to integrate its likely short supply of Storm Shadows it's already received from Britain and France, which would be worth the effort since it takes a lot of pressure off the limited and aging fleet of Su-24s. To start wrapping this up, like the Leopard, Bradley, Abrams, and so on, the F-16 will likely be a very useful platform that will allow Ukraine to get a constant supply of munitions and ready access to parts. And, much like those vehicles, the F-16 will be subject to the wild expectations of the press and their intended audience, most of which have already made up their mind as to how the jet will perform in Ukraine. Some have already decided that it will catastrophically fail because they compared its stats against the Su-57 on Wikipedia. Others have the starry-eyed fantasy that there will be a Kirchbridge-sized hole in the Sea of Azov a few hours after one of those cool tridents gets painted on the Viper's vertical stabilizer. It's going to be difficult to avoid the bad press, and even harder to avoid the usual cryptids lurking in the swampy wastes of Quora and Reddit. You can bet they'll be foaming at the mouth the second an F-16 gets shot down, as the fleeting memory of the numerous Russian aircraft that suffered the same fate evaporates from their mind. Calm place. That's not you anymore. That's not you anymore. There's a mindset that you can have to better prepare yourself for that. Yes, I hope the F-16 will be enough of a problem for Russia that they finally stop this senseless invasion, but it's important to stay realistic. It would be amazing if they were able to integrate it with the fancy new AIM-174 and get the last of the A-50s, or, more importantly, cancel Russia's ability to safely launch cruise missiles at hospitals. And a steady supply of standoff munitions would cripple Russia's ability to sustain operations. But we have to accept that Ukraine might not, and with the political climate at the time of this recording, probably won't get that constant supply. It's best to think of the F-16 as just another jet, but another jet that's capable of handling whatever role it's pushed into, and another platform that can use the, hopefully, constant stream of Western ordnance. Now forget everything I said and give me a hand here. Ukraine let me borrow that T-90M they liberated from the Battle of Kursk too. Unfortunately for them, they won't be getting it back. See, I'm thinking, right? If we sacrifice it to Odin, he just might be able to convince Sweden to give Ukraine a few of those Gripens. War will be over in a few days. Come on, we'll get coffee later. Hey there. I want to start out by saying thank you so much for making it this far. You have no idea how much it means to me. Second, this video had a deadline. That was when the F-16 made it to Ukraine. And here we are. So instead of rushing to chase that, I decided to spend as long as it took me to make the best video I could possibly make with my current skill set. And I couldn't have done it alone. I had a whole team of friends that were helping me along the way. And I'm so excited to see what I do next. Stick around. Or good to pop up.
Oh, nice shot. Oh, that was so cool looking.
Oh, what the fuck happened to Quinn? Or this tank? What happened to this tank? This tank fell down the hill. I gotta save him. Careless. Set to careless. You fucking monster. Careless. All of you, stop caring so much. The tank is trying to shoot you down with this main gun.
Yeah,
Oh.
one just shot at me.
Fucking T-90.
Alright, is that straight ahead? Is that in straight ahead, that collection points?
Yeah,
yeah.
straight ahead. Turning on.
Who's in-
Okay.
Oh,
Oh fuck! I
my god.
jumped out.
Okay, we're good.
Yeah, we're fine.
You might have to do this, Scout.
Yep.
Alright, we are flying.
Did you
Directly
just say you
over?
jumped out?
Yeah,
We are on target at 600 feet.
we absolutely are. Unfortunately for you, we are not a bomber.
About here. All right, ready?
Yep. Out of here is where it's going. Holy shit, biscuits. It's gone.
Going into fucking orbit.
It
It's
just
lazy.
sta-
It's going after
it's-
something.
it's,
Oh god, that's lasing.
Alright.
Yeah,
It
what's going
really
on?
wants your targeting pod. And turn and launch. Barrel roll dive. Right?
How much we bouncing?
It's staying in.
I don't like that gun.
Is that the